Welcome to episode 2 of Care to Share, the podcast for anyone in the sector who thinks deeply about retention, employee well-being, and quality of care. We bring together experts from the front lines and the head offices to share their insights, stories, and practical advice. Today, we have on Ben Miller. Now, Ben started his journey when he was 19 years old, and he's risen through the ranks now to become a registered mental health nurse and an award-winning care home manager. So he's led one care home from good, I believe, to outstanding. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
That's correct. And he's currently leading another care home from requires improvement. He's taken them to good and they're on their way to outstanding now. So Ben's going to have loads of really interesting and knowledgeable advice that he's already applied in his work. So, Ben, welcome to the show.
It's good to be on. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So, can you tell us about your journey from, if I get this right, at 19, you were applying for jobs. You didn't have a particular desire to work in care. And here you are, years down the line, and you've got some awards under your belt. Can you tell us about how that journey happened?
Yeah, I'm going to have to be brief because I did a chat with someone about this a couple of years ago, and we ended up spending about an hour discussing just my journey from care assistant all the way up to outstanding, and then I had to do 2 episodes. So I'll try and be brief. Yeah, basically, I was out of work. I was 19, living with my grandparents, needed a job, needed money. So I went to the job centre and literally just applied for everything that was there. And the local care home got back to me first. I don't think anything else got back to me. The only other job I remember applying for was like it was at Specsavers in like a warehouse or something, kind of repairing like glasses handles or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of like the scope of jobs I was applying for. And then I was interviewed. The interview, from what I remember, was pretty tragic. It was terrible. By a stroke of fortune, I knew the head chef at the home. So she was the grandmother of one of my school friends. I think she put a good word in for me and I got the job. And when I got the job, the culture in the home was not great. In fact, on my very first shift when I went on break, somebody sat me down and just said, "You don't belong working here. You shouldn't be here. So what I recommend is you finish your shift, you go home, you write your notice out and you don't come back." That was kind of what it was like. I didn't fit into whatever it is they wanted. I don't know. And it took me about 6 months to overcome that, whatever it is they had against me. About 3 people spoke to me in the entirety of those 6 months, roughly. That was about it. The rest of them just completely ignored me, pretend I wasn't there. And it was just basically because I'm really stubborn. And I was just kind of like, do you know what? If you're going to be like this, I'm just going to come in every day with a smile on my face and just pretend you're not getting to me. And eventually that kind of got overcome. People just either warmed to me or new people had started and they were acting like that towards new people. It was a pretty tragic and terrible culture that I went into. And I think not many people survived back then. I think it was a testament to me that I did, but it was more through sheer bloody mindedness than anything else, really. So that was my journey into the care home role, and I grew into it more than anything else. We didn't get training back then. People were still drag lifting. They knew it was wrong, but people were still doing it. They had the old arm and a leg. If somebody was sliding out of a wheelchair, you didn't get a hoist or something. You just got them 2 people under the arm. That was kind of what it was like back then. It was still a very old-fashioned culture that was just prevalent there. And it took a long time to overcome that. I mean, I was with that company on and off. There was a very brief period of time where I left when I was at uni, 17 years. And it took a good 3 or 4 years before that kind of culture kind of came out of that home. It was very difficult. But yeah, that was how I got into social care. Not the glamorous. I'd love to be able to say, oh, I care for people. I've got a really kind, caring nature, and I really wanted to make a difference. Because while some of those things are true, I am kind, I am caring. I like to think I'm empathetic, and those sorts of things. I didn't go in there going, I want to make a difference to social care and people's lives. I genuinely just needed a job, and ended up making a career out of it.
So I'm curious about 2 things. One is, well, I'll ask you them separately. What do you think they meant when you turned up at your first shift and they said, "You don't belong here"? pack up your bags and go?
I think back then you had generally, from what I know, bear in mind I was young, but there were a lot of people who've been in that home for a long time. We're talking 5, 10, 15 years. And it was quite rare at that point for people to leave the role. And there weren't many care homes in the area. Nursing dementia, which is what I'd gone into, there was about 3, I think, something like that. So what you had was, I guess, a group of people that just kind of they stuck to their own. And you had a lot of people who were probably late 20s, more than likely mid-20s onwards. And there was me, a 19-year-old guy. And you didn't get many men in social care back then. You still don't really now, but the dynamics changed a bit. Kind of, let's be fair, it's not seen as a very successful role. You're not going to go into social care and make a ton of money. You're going to have to work an awful lot of hours as a guy if you're going to be the main breadwinner and a care assistant, and you're going to feed a family, for example. So I think they kind of look down on me with a bit of disdain, because who is this young bloke coming in to do this job, really? And I think there was an element of that. I don't remember too much about anyone who started after me to a point. I know that things got better within a year of me going there. I remember there were a few other people that started, and they were a lot more welcoming. I mean, they had one girl who worked there who would only work with one of 2 people, and that was her sister who worked there, or the deputy manager. And if those 2 weren't on shift, she wouldn't work any shifts. So, that was kind of and that was allowed. People knew. She was very open about that fact. So I'm not going to work unless the deputy manager is here and works with me, or my sister is on shift and works with me. And that was well known, and that was encouraged and allowed. And it was just a really strange dynamic. And I think, like I said, if I wasn't such a stubborn person, they probably would have gone home and just gone, yeah, do you know what? Warehouse work looks a lot more appealing than this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can safely say, I've never worked in a more toxic environment than that. And like I said, it did gradually over time get better, thankfully.
You said it took 3 to 4 years for that culture to really shift. What caused that, do you think?
I think people becoming more accepting. Over time, there became more attrition and more people left and more new people started. And I think people realised that we're going to have to make more of an effort here, because if we don't, then we're just going to end up with this constant revolving door. And I think the needs of the sector changed as well, to a point. I mean, once you kind of get people leaving, or people's needs start changing as well, and you need more team members and things like that, you had to do things like bring in bank staff, for example, which I think didn't happen so much back then. I could be wrong, but I can only go on my experiences. They didn't really have bank staff per se, and they had to bring those in. I do remember very specifically they did use a bit of agency. I can remember an order coming from up top saying, the agency's going to stop. You stop the agency right now. So again, and I remember the threat was, if you use any more agency, there will be no pay rise. I remember that threat very specifically, and everyone was kind of like, right, well, we're not going to use agency anymore then. And again, there's that dynamic then of, right, well, if we're not going to use agency, we have to keep people. So I can imagine that more effort was made by those on the ground floor, because the management were pretty welcoming and inviting. And I can remember going to a staff meeting and the manager keeping me and a couple of others aside and just kind of going, look, what's going wrong? Why are we losing people? So I think that they wanted to make a difference. And it was just that people, kind of the care assistants especially, just weren't welcoming to people. And like I said, that mentality shifted. Those experiences, though, did shape how I want to lead, because I don't ever really want someone going through that. I'd be mortified if someone new that I brought in walked into an environment where they were told, you don't belong here, go home and don't come back. So that has shaped how I work. And weirdly, when I left, I had to leave that home when I did my nursing. So I went and did my mental health nursing, and I really struggled in my final year with my dissertation and just my studies plus working. So I didn't work enough for them to keep me on a contract. So which was fine. So when I graduated, I went and worked in another care home. I was planning on going on the NHS, but I was told the Conservative government came in and stripped the area of all the services, and I was told there's no jobs going. So if you want a job, you're going to have to work in social care. So I got a job in a dementia nursing home, another dementia nursing home. And on my first day, bizarrely, something very similar happened, but for very different reasons. And on my first day, first of all, there was absolute bedlam because I got there and nobody knew I was due to start. So nobody knew where I was and what was going on. But then when they eventually found me people to look after me, the two nurses I was with, basically, they did a handover and then they sat me down and just went, don't work here. Like, do not work here. Go home and hand your notice in. This is not a nice place to work. And if you work here, your PIN number is on the line because this is a pretty horrible place to work. So they kind of were telling me to leave, but rather than my first experience, which was we don't like you, you need to leave. This was we're doing you a favor by telling you to leave because you're at risk here. And I stuck that role out for 8 months. And again, I learned a lot about what I didn't want to do as a leader in terms of induction process. And this was a big home. It was a huge care home, but it was positioned in an area that was not conducive to having a lot of staff. It was off a bus route. I mean, there was a bus, but it stopped like a good half a mile at the bottom of a very steep hill away. So people who relied on transport were going to struggle. And then you had just access to it was just poor and didn't use a lot of agency then, and they were just working constantly short staffed. And what they would do is they would hold recruitment days, they would have recruitment fairs, there'd be this big advert in the town, come up and have a look at the home and come and see if you want to work here. Get loads of teenagers just out of school showing up, and they'd basically give them all jobs and start them all at the same time. And you'd come into work one day and they'd go, this is carer A, carer B, carer C, carer D, they're starting work here. And you'd just be like, we ain't got enough staff to look after them. These people who have just had no training, they're literally first day given a uniform, there you go, off you go and work. And you just be there like, how on earth are we going to look after these people? Because we can't even look after ourselves, let alone spend the time inducting them. And then I don't know, let's say they'd hire 4 people and 3 of them would leave within the first few weeks because they just hated it. And you'd get the leaders there going, why is this happening? Why are they all leaving? I don't understand. And it would be just because it just, they couldn't get on top of the fact that it was just a very poor place to work generally, and they couldn't sort the culture. And whilst they're short staffed, they're still bringing in residents as well. So you've got, I don't know, 100 beds, let's say. They're still bringing in residents, but they can't staff it. It was crazy. They needed to put just a hold on everything and go, right, until this is sorted, we can't bring any more admissions. We're going to focus on what we've got. But obviously money talks, and yeah, it was difficult. And I'm not sick, I'm genuinely not a sick person, but towards, I'm rarely ill, but towards the end of my time there, I found myself kind of going to bed and going, I don't want to work tomorrow. I hope I wake up and I'm ill so that I don't have to go in. That was kind of how bad it was at that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't a great place to work.
That's intense. And it sounds like what they did was treat people like numbers and not like humans.
Yeah.
So, given your experiences in bad cultures at these care homes, what are the top 3 things that you take away now as a manager to make sure that doesn't happen?
Top 3, listen to the team, and that's kind of first and foremost. And I think people will go, we do surveys, and we do listen. I think there's a difference between kind of, let's be fair, people want to hear, especially those at the top, want to hear what they want to hear what they want to hear. So 2 people might go, atmosphere is toxic and new staff aren't staying because they're being butted out by a certain group of people, and the others might be that certain group of people, or people who are scared of that certain group of people. But because the majority have said, yeah, for things are fine, don't understand why people are leaving, people will go, oh, cool, well, it's only 2 people, so we'll just leave it then. No criticism there. We'll just assume that it's the people we're hiring that are wrong, rather than the 2 people that are actually possibly standing up and telling the truth. So I think that you need to have that involvement and also work quickly to shape the culture that you want. According to C.D. Fredericks, it takes about 10 years to change a culture effectively. I mean, you can have culture shifts, but to get the culture you want fully. And I can attest to that because in my previous role, I was manager for 8 years. And I would say that I probably was about 2 years away from achieving the culture that I truly wanted, maybe a bit less. I would say it involves an awful lot of listening and actioning and investigating. I mean, I went through culture shifts where we had like a safeguarding situation, and I found out that 2 certain people, for example, when they were paired up, didn't talk to anyone else on shift. and just made things very difficult and awkward. So we initiated a whole home rota change as a result of that. And yeah, I got a lot of flack for that and people weren't very happy, but it split those two people up and it meant that the home was a nicer place to work. So it's creating actions and just trying to build that culture that you want. As well as listening, then point two would be probably communication. So that would be you've got a vision, tell people what it is and how we're going to achieve it and get them on board. I want to build an outstanding team with a high performing culture that welcomes everybody and gives everybody a chance. So I'm not going to tolerate it when a new member of staff starts and the first thing I get is the person they work with on their very first day come in and going, oh, they ain't very good. They ain't going to last very long. Why? What did you do to welcome that person? What did they do wrong? And what did you do about it? You know, those sorts of things, and having those coaching conversations where you have a look with the person, because it's easy to blame the new person for not being proactive or for not working to a certain standard or for not being talkative or whatever it is. But you need to look at the person that's doing the inducting as well. Is there a personality clash? Are they not the right person to do the inducting? Does this happen frequently with them? Do we need to change the mentor so that, or the inductor or whoever, so that this person gets a fair crack? And if after two people have worked with this person and gone, no, they're not right for it, then we need to have a look at, okay, maybe the person isn't right for the role.
Yes, agreed.
And then I think the third thing is well-being and looking, and that comes up quite a lot. And I think some people, a lot of places say they get involved in well-being. You know, we have pizza Fridays, got a ping pong table, Tai Chi classes, or something, you know, things like that. But I think it's really looking, it starts with before people are burning out, and it starts with things like the listening and the communicating. That's really important. Something that I adopted, which you have to do in the right way because it can come across as like checking in on people. If someone's off sick, generally, I'll message them and it'll be a
Yeah.
genuine message of hope you know heard you're writing today because your daughter's not very well. I hope she's okay, and I hope you're okay. If you need anything, let me know. And that can come across as just disingenuous sometimes because let's be fair, you're the boss. So there's a risk that someone's going to look at that and go, he's checking in on me to make sure that when my daughter is sick and that I'm not pulling a sickie and that I'm going to be I'm going to be in tomorrow. So it's important that you do make that effort to come across as genuine. And then when they are back in, you know, have that return to work interview, but not in a formal kind of, right, we're here to make sure that you were off sick, but just is everything okay? Like, I've got to document it, make sure that there's anything we could have done to support you back to work, those sorts of things. And just being genuine and not accusatory. And hopefully whether it works or not, I don't know, because I didn't start. I've only just started that in this role. I hadn't started along in the previous role. But hopefully what will happen is people who were off sick will then look at the way they approach other people who were off sick. And rather than going, oh bloody hell, we're short staffed again, God, off sick, oh terrible shortages, they're actually looking at it and going, oh, I hope they're okay. I hope they're okay. Because I think sometimes people in a culture where you've got team members, and when someone's off sick, the whole team are there, short staffed. Oh, I bet her daughter's not bloody hell. I bet she's just put in a fast one because she was out drinking last night, or something like that. When you get that sort of rumbling, someone goes off sick, and they'll be in bed or whatever, or at home, and they'll be going, "Oh God, when so and so was off sick, oh, they got a right roasting in Handover. Everyone was talking it. I bet they're saying the same thing about me." Oh, and that builds that anxiety. Then, do I really want to go back to work tomorrow? Because the same team that I let down yesterday are going to be on tomorrow. So maybe I'll leave it a bit longer and I'll phone in sick again for tomorrow. And I'll come back on Friday when it's a different team on because, and you get that sort of thing. Whereas actually, if everyone is kind of supportive, then you're not going to have that fear. And maybe they'll even look forward to coming back to work. And it's about building that. And it's one of those things where, as a leader, it's really hard because sometimes you can't help the frustration. I've gone into Handover and gone, 1, 2, 3, who are we missing? Okay, they're offset. Oh, right, okay. I'm not surprised. I've been guilty of that. I think everyone's been guilty of that because you have that moment of frustration where you feel responsible, the team is short staffed. But you doing that gives them carte blanche to go, oh, yeah, they are off sick and we are short staffed. That's not good enough. And then that's when that rumbling starts. So it is important to just kind of be all, you know, going, okay, right, we're sure. You guys have got this. I'll go see if I can find any cover. Hopefully she's okay. And just, you know, no big deal. No biggie. We got this. It's fine. And building that.
Interestingly, what I'm hearing from you is that your style of leadership is that you encourage leadership from the people you're leading. So, like with the induction, you say, "Well, how did you welcome them?" And you get them to think about how they can do a better job of being a leader. And the same with this, you want to encourage people to be compassionate and positive when somebody's off, so that you don't create this bad environment and everyone is responsible for it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
It starts with the leader, and this is why I suppose it takes 10 years to change a culture, and this is why as well I like getting new people in. I like getting new team members because, and I'm sure a lot of people relate to this. You go into a culture that's already established, it can be hard to break into that culture and start making them appreciate the things. So I can go into a handover in a new role, for example, where it's well established that they moan and groan if they're short staffed, for example. And I can go into it. I can go into that handover and I can go, oh well, I hope they're okay. I'll send them a message and make sure they're okay. You've got this, guys. And there's a possibility they're probably just going to go, oh Christ, when he's taking this well, we're short staffed. This isn't good enough. Sure, he's off sick, daughter's in, whatever. Whereas then with a new person, I can get them in and sit them down in an induction meeting. Oh, but this is what I expect. And they don't know any
Yeah.
different. And then
Yep.
hopefully one or two things will happen. They'll either adopt to the culture that's already out there, or they'll listen to what I want and go, actually, what he's saying sounds a lot nicer. I'm going to try that way. That was one of the biggest culture shifts I had was prior to our first outstanding. Was we brought in 3 new people, all of whom had care experience, and God, they were brilliant. And that was the first time that I heard there was 4 new people. I think I saw it was 4 new people. I just come up with this induction scheme, so we'd had a retention problem. I sat down with the team, and our previous recruitment strategy had been: if you've got a pulse and you want a job here, I'll hire you for sure. And we agreed as a team we would rather be short staffed with the right number of people on shift, so with the right skill mix, than have a group of people on shift with, let's say, 6 people. 2 of them are really good, and 4 of them don't want to be there and couldn't care less, and they're just here for the money, and they might go home sick. So I was a lot more selective in our recruitment process. I did a lot of research into job adverts and advertising, and I did a lot of work on inducting people and better ways to induct people than what we had previously. I brought in 4 new people, and I did the culture work with them. So I spent a lot of time, rather than previous induction, which I inherited, was day 1. I'll spend about 4 hours with you. I will go through everything with you, and then go, well, there you go. There's the person you're working with. Off you go. I'll see you in 12 weeks. And then in 12 weeks, we would review everything I went through on day 1 and go, do you know how to book holiday? Do you know how to phone in sick? Do you know how to do this? Then you train, blah, 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 blah. Cool. You signed off. Back to work. So then I changed that to having regular meetings with people. So I would make sure that during a 12-week induction, I would have a minimum of 6 meetings with them, including a meeting before they even started. And during those meetings, I would impress upon them what I wanted. I would have a checklist of things that I was going to go through with them, and then I would build on that. Meeting 1, for example, we'll talk about the fire procedure, let's say. So every meeting thereafter, we talk about the fire procedure. Meeting 2, fire procedure and training. So then every meeting thereafter, fire procedure and training. Meeting
Keep going
3,
for it.
fire procedure training. Mental
Hey,
capacity. You okay?
I think I've got an Alexa that is responding to some things you're saying,
Oh, fair
so I'm
enough.
going to unplug it. Let's just check it's this one. Okay.
Because we recorded, I didn't know whether to carry on there or not.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I can cut this stuff out, and this is life, so it's good. So you went from meeting them once at the beginning of 12 weeks to once at the end and signing them off because that's what
Yep,
you inherited.
yep,
But you've changed this system to
yep,
meeting them 6 times in 12 weeks, including a meeting before they even start.
yep. Pretty much, yeah. So and having that, I can impress upon them what's important. So you add things to it. Like I said, you have kind of meeting 1, talk about the fire procedure, and then every meeting afterwards, fire procedure. 2, fire procedure and training. Meeting 3, fire procedure training, Mental Capacity Act, and it goes on from there. But in every meeting, we also talk about my expectations for culture. Day 1, we talk about terminology. Terminology is a massive thing for me. I've wrote about it on LinkedIn. I've talked about it at events. I hate people being referred to walkers, feeders, double ups, hoisters, anything like that. And I hate them being referred to as chores. I'm putting them to bed. I'm feeding them. Hate it. So for meeting 1, I stress to people, we do not use that terminology here. And if you hear anyone use that terminology, you have my permission to either ignore it or preferably say, I've been told we don't say those sort of things. And so we use words like assist, encourage. You're not putting them to bed, I'm helping them to bed. I'm not going to feed them, I'm going to help them with their lunch. They're not hoisters. She just needs two people to assist her. She's not a double up. She needs two people to support her, those sorts of things. And it's just, in my opinion, and there might be research about this, I don't know. But in my opinion, if you take it away, the fact that they're not at shore and you're putting it into people's heads that they need help, it changes someone's mentality. Because it's like, you do washing, don't you? You do washing at home, but you're not doing that here. You are supporting people. So I impress upon that very early from that first meeting, for example. And then I've got grounds then as well. Day 3, they're out there and they go, right, I'm going to do the feeds. You can go, well, hang on, we've already talked about that. And you've signed to say we've already talked about that. So you know that we don't say things like that. So let's come back in the office. Let's have a chat about why you felt it was appropriate to use that terminology. And let's work on how we can avoid using those terms. So, which sounds like a very long-winded way of doing things. But on the other hand, I've got a certain way that I want people to work. And if I go, you've just called them feeders and double ups, but I'm just going to ignore that, then we've got a problem, because I'm also showing them that I'm not genuine. I'm telling them to do something, but when they ignore it, I'm just walking away from it. So it's important to kind of get that. And I'm also showing as well that I want them to action this as well. This is what I expect from you. I expect you, if you hear someone to use those words, for example, you're going to say to them, like I said, well, we don't talk like that here.
Yeah, like a real lead by example. And there is research on it. I don't know the numbers, but there is research on language like that. There's a book called Atomic Habits that you might like.
Yes, I've read it.
Yeah, do you know it?
James
Great.
Clear, yes.
Yeah,
Brilliant book.
and he talks about exactly that, about how the language you use around the things that you have to do regularly changes your perspective of them.
Yes.
So yeah, feeders, and I have to feed, as opposed to, whether it's like, I get to help this person with this. It has a big effect on how people think. So that's really interesting. Really, I've not heard that insight before. Okay, so to tell me about you leading at home from good to outstanding. What was the changes that you needed to make?
So when I took over as manager, there was a period of time. So I got interviewed in the April for the job and got given the job, but I wasn't going to be given the job officially until June. This was in 2016. So whilst I was waiting, another home in the company got inspected and got an outstanding rating. So I went through the report and I went, we're better than that. So we can definitely, we can get this. The outstanding rating hadn't long been, the rating system hadn't long been incorporated back then. So I'm a new manager. I'm young, 28 at the time, 27, 28, something like that. So I'm really wanting to make a mark. And I've been thrown in, I've been deputy manager, but I had no management experience. And I kind of had the old, you're manager now. If you need us, give us a call. But other than that, you've got this. You've got this. So I'm there like, well, I've got something to aim for. I was very lucky that I inherited a good home. Took over in June, inspected in September, goods across the board. And I'm there going, that's not my inspection though, because I've only been here for a certain, 4 months in June, July, August, September, 4 months. So I'm there going, right, well, I haven't been able to put my stamp on it properly yet. Like I'm still just kind of using a lot of the same old processes, a lot of the same old systems we had before, because it was working, it was functional. So I called, not necessarily a council of war per se, but basically got anyone. I just put a notice up and said, look, we'll have a meeting to discuss the CQC rating and anyone who wants to make a difference and improve on it. I didn't get that much traction, to be fair. 2 activities coordinators. I think I got 2 domestics and 1 care assistant and probably a nurse, and that was about it. So I basically kind of sat down with them and said, we want to be the best of the best. We need to want to be the best of the best. How do we get that? And I think what changed from that point on was that the activities team got on board wholeheartedly. They were like, you're absolutely right. We can, there's a difference to be made here. And they embraced it, and they were doing an awful lot of work that I would call above and beyond. Prime example was going out on trips, for example. If you've ever kind of worked in a care home that's got a vehicle, normally going out on a trip involves kind of like, it's like a bit like a military operation. It's like, right, we're going to the beach 3 weeks from tomorrow because we need to do whatever. And that was what it used to be like for us. And they just kind of went, do you know what? Why do we need to do that? Why can't we just come in on? Why don't we just why can't we come in and go? It's really nice out there. Let's go to the beach today. What's stopping us? There's nothing really stopping you. Why don't we go in and go? Sun's out. Let's go to the beach. Who wants to go to the beach? Cool. Let's go. Let's do it. And once you do that a few times, it works really well. So people were going out left, right, and centre. They were doing trips. I mean, one point they went to the beach during Storm Eunice, I think it was called. And they loved it. Great time. So they were doing things that were above and beyond, not just with trips out, but with other things as well. That was when I started my culture shift, and I started looking at the things that were good and going, but can we make them better? Because it's working. It is working. You look at the induction process that we were having, for example, that was kind of, functionally bringing in somebody, me sitting there with them for 4 hours ago, this is how you book holiday, this is how you phone in sick, this is how you phone in timesheet, blah, blah, blah. Functionally, it works. And it frees up my time because I go, there you go, you're working with this person, and I see them in 12 weeks and go through those things. Functionally, it works. But the biggest thing that changed, like I said, was the way we recruited. And what happened was we had a period of time where we lost some people. And I didn't really have a discernible reason for why we lost them, but we were then bringing in people. And like I said, it was a bit like, I need staff. I'm not sure about you from based on the interview, but I need someone to work Saturday nights and you can work Saturday nights. So I'll give you the job, sort of thing. And yeah, we were really struggling for a good few months. And we had a care assistant who was very good because she was really good at the job, but her sickness level was terrible. I mean, it was diabolical. One thing she had was she would come in on shift and she'd go home in about an hour. She'd come in, vomit, whatever. And I had a really good discussion. We had a team meeting because we were struggling for staff. I had a team meeting. I just called them all in, all my seniors and people who I trusted, and just said, what is going on? And they cited this care assistant and said there is nothing more soul destroying than coming into a shift and being, happy to work, seeing her walk in and she's got the face on her and she's going to ask to go home sick. And you go, oh, no, we're going to be short-staffed again. And they go, we would rather come in and be short-staffed and know we're short-staffed and just know we've got to get on with it, no issues, than come in and go, what time is she going home? Is she going to go home now? Is she going to go home in an hour? Well, how much work is she going to do in that time? So they said, we need to bring in people who are going to work, because you're bringing in people and they ain't working very well. They don't fit into the culture we need. And it's turning into a bit of a mess. So bizarrely, I'd interviewed somebody because we needed people to work afternoons, let's say. I think it was afternoons. I'd interviewed somebody. I got a real bad feeling from her from the interview. On paper, looked great. Didn't interview great. And I was a bit like, I'm really not sure about you. But I need someone to work afternoons. And I thought, no, do you know what? I'm going to listen to this. And I went straight back into my office and I sent this lady an email and just said, really sorry, but the job's gone. I'm going to have to rescind the job offer. Really sorry. And I sat down and looked at everything and I went, right, so these people that I've hired, I looked at my recent recruits and about, let's say 5, 3 hadn't worked out. 3 had literally started and finished in about 2 weeks. The other 2 were just struggling, like hanging on by the skin of their teeth. They weren't working well. Nobody was getting on with them. I swapped mentors, that sort of thing, and it wasn't working. And they blatantly should. And all 5 of them, I looked at them and I just went, they were the first 5 that applied. I gave them the job because we needed people and it didn't work out. So I did some research. I read a few books about marketing and research and things, and looked at creating a job advert, because we had a Facebook page that was taking off and was doing well. We had an Indeed page, and I was doing very generic Indeed adverts, and the ones: competitive salary, annual leave, want to be a care assistant, come and work here. You wash and dress people, and you work 7 till 7, that sort of thing. I mean, it was pretty drab. So I looked at how I advertise. We looked at how we advertise. I looked at the how you about how you induct people. And I spent more time with the team looking at what we can do to just kind of make those little differences. And a lot of it was down to recruitment. A lot of it was bringing in the right people, because the team I had was special. And I inherited a good team that was just managed to a good standard, not outstanding. And we just looked at what more we can do. And one of the things that helped was I looked at niches. What niches do we have in our area? We're by an army barracks, where you've got an awful lot of army wives who want to work but have kids, and their husbands are away in Afghanistan or wherever it was at the time, and they can't work school hours. No, so they can work school hours. They can't work 7 till 7. So I stuck an advert out specifically tailored for school-run mums that said, look, if you want flexibility, I'll give you a 0 hours contract and you can work 9 till 3, half 8 till half 2 with us as a care assistant. And the traction I got from that was remarkable. People would just, I was fending people off with a stick for this role. And I can only take on a certain amount because, unfortunately, for anyone who wants to try that, you need to be prepared for the backlash from your team, because you are going to get people going, well, I've got kids, but I work 7 till 7, so why can't they? And you get people who are just, they just don't get it. They don't understand. If I'm short staffed and I'm not using agency, it's better to have someone working 9 till 3 than it is to have no one at all. That's the end of it. At the end of the day, we were running shifts with 8. We were supposed to run shifts with 8 staff in the morning, for example. Sometimes we would have to do it with 6 and 2 coming in at 9 o'clock, but it's better than nothing. So we had that, and we had an awful lot of quality candidates. And this is where some care settings make mistakes, because they will go, I can't hire you because you cannot work the hours we set. And that's a mistake. And I think it was 3 of the people that I took on a 9 till 3 basis ended up working full time at some point, because their
So you
kids got
started with flexibility,
yeah,
met them where they were,
yeah,
and then that built the loyalty for them to join full
yeah.
time.
And the kids grow up. The kids grow
Yeah,
up. And so you end up with this, you end up with them staying because you've given them that loyalty. So through improving the adverts, we did attract more people as well. So like I said, there were 4 hires in particular that really stand out. And bizarrely, I took 3 of them from other care homes. So one left one care home, and then somebody followed her, and then another left another care home, because they heard we were building a really nice place to work. And so we took on 4 people. And that really did shift things, because that was when I started saying to people, right, now we're going to stop talking about people like their chores. Now I want to do this. And that transition, just having those 4 people in, made a massive difference to the way that the home worked, because they were working the way that I wanted them to. They were actually really good at the job as well. So again, I hadn't just hired anyone off the street who'd never done care before, who wasn't moldable. Like I said, we had people who I brought in who had care experience but just weren't very nice people. And there were people that I brought in who didn't have care experience and didn't really want to work in care, but were just doing it because they thought it was easy. And
yeah.
so sorry, go on.
No, it's just interesting. I'm hearing that as you started to care more about the recruitment process, the people you recruited cared more about the job.
Oh yeah, it wasn't an easy process. I mean, it sounds very much like I went back and went, oh, this is it, and I changed it overnight. You're talking months. I mean, this is weeks and months worth of work. There's a book I read called Story Brand by Donald Miller, no relation, and he basically looks at adverts and just tells you why certain adverts for certain things work, and why you like certain films. There's also another book by Nir Eyal. I don't know if you might have read it.
Yeah,
It's called,
I know
is it
him.
Nudge?
Yeah,
Hook?
distraction.
Yeah, no, the other book he did. Is it Hook or Nudge? I think it's Hook or Nudge, one of them.
I don't know the names of the books. I haven't read them, but I've heard him speak about
Yeah,
distractions.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So he wrote Indistractable. But before that, he wrote a book, I'm pretty sure it's called Hook, about why these products attract people and why people are attracted to them, and what people do, what the people who make these apps or these phones or whatever, how they do it, how they attract your attention. And so I applied that to as much advertising as possible, which is really interesting, because when I came to this new role, I wrote an advert for here, and it was kind of like an anti-advert, because the advert was basically my LinkedIn on my link, and I wrote a post today that says, employing people who are looking for staff, what does competitive salary mean? And
yes,
I've wrote some LinkedIn posts about kind of job adverts. The advert that we've got at the moment is like an anti-advert, and it basically says other care settings will tell you that their benefits are competitive salary, we'll give you holiday, we'll give you an employee pension, we'll give you car parking. Those aren't benefits. Here are the benefits that we really offer you. And I said it's almost saying ignore all them, because they're not actually offering you anything. Come to us, because this is actually what we're offering you. And so, within a day of me putting this advert out here, someone came to me and went, Christ, can tell you've been writing the adverts, because they weren't drab, they weren't dull. And this is what I was doing, was I was trying to write adverts that spoke to people. So it wasn't the generic, do you want to work in social care? Do you want to make a difference? It was actually, and the adverts that I wrote in my previous role were basically, there are some absolutely incredible people who live here, and if you don't care for them, who's going to? It was a call to arms. It was, these people need care, and if these people are incredible and they need you to help them, and the amount of
Interesting.
attention that sort of advert got. And I would also, Facebook had Facebook jobs back then, and I would go, right, I've got 30 quid left in the petty cash account. I've had an idea for an advert. Let's just write this. We don't even need staff. Let's write this advert and put it out there and see how much attention
Hmm.
it gets. And I can remember at one point I did that, and that was the example of 30 quid. But I forgot to change the parameters. So it was a good thing I did do that. And I ended up with this job going out countrywide instead of locally. So it was a good learning experience. But the amount of applications we had was insane. And this was back before days where you ended up with everyone wanting sponsorship, where you put an advert on Indeed and you get like 50 applications and 48 of them from kind of Africa or something like that. Sponsorship. This is when people actually applied were real people. And we had so many nations. And admittedly, I was there going, look, you live in Stoke-on-Trent. I'm really sorry, we're not local. Like, you live in Liverpool, really sorry. Or you live in Kent. But the amount of applications we got were incredible. And it was good feedback marketing. So they would say to them, look, I'm really sorry you can't work here because you don't live locally. But what was it about the advert that attracted you? And people said it was different. It was something different. They were looking for care work, and they were used to seeing the same old drab adverts, and this was something different. And that was what appealed to people, and it became a game. It was fun. Let's see, that advert attracted 30 people. Let's see, with the same amount of money, if I tweak these parameters a little bit and just adjust this slightly and change the wording, can I get 35 people applying? It became a game almost. It was
Yeah, that's
fun.
quite.
It was fun.
Yeah, you're
Recruitment
going
doesn't have
for
to
like
be
the
boring.
real psychology of the advert and getting much better results. And also it sort of rings true to how you choose to inspire people and get them on board and ask them to be leaders. You seem to do a lot of work about really getting into the minds of people and making them want to make a good change and make an outstanding home, as
Yeah, that was
opposed to.
the other thing I did. That was the other thing I did actually. Now that you say that, was I'd go, right, I need someone to work mornings, 18 hours a week, so 3 mornings a week. I've got two people who work though that. Let's bring them in and let's ask them what is going to attract them to come and work here again. So then you've already got a lot of people. If you need someone to work weekend nights, for example, and you've already got someone who works weekend nights, what's going to why do they work those weekend nights, and what is going to attract them to come and work here? So that you can tailor those adverts even more specifically, because you're advertising, you need to look to a niche. If you make a very generic advert, you're not going to get the best applicants, because you need to attract a certain type of
Yes, you
people.
only get generic applicants. Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. And this, you've got to attack the right niche. And people at nights generally fall into two categories from my experience, and I could be wrong. It's normally people with kids whose partner works during the week, during the day. So partner comes home and then they can go to work and work the night shift. Or sometimes it's older, more experienced people who just kind of want a bit of a quieter life more than anything else. Obviously, there are people who fall in the gaps in between, but from my experience of just kind of working in this environment, those are kind of the two main gaps that apply to nights. So by reaching out but if you're doing a night job advert, make sure that you include that this would be if you've got kids, this is a great role, because you can work while your husband will be home. Not necessarily that wording, but those are the sort of things you need to be saying to people. So they look at the advert, if they're looking for jobs, they've been on maternity leave, they've got a 1-year-old and the husband works 9 to 5, and they can look at that and go, do you know what, those hours are perfect. That's great.
Yeah,
I can do 2 nights a week. 2 nights a week. Perfect. And I don't have to miss out on anything with the kids. And those are the sorts of things that you need to get across to people. When we do bank adverts, for example, I will target students. I'll target students. And if there's scope for 9 to 3s, school run mums, but mainly students. And I'll be saying things like, you're looking for some extra money in the holidays. This is perfect for you, because whilst you're at college, whilst you're at college, you can do some weekends here. But in the holidays, when you're off, we've got people who want to be off with their kids. So if you come and work here, then you'll have loads of hours in the holidays when you're off. Think of all the money you get.
that's
And
great.
it's those sorts of things that people need to think about when they're doing their adverts.
So we've got 8 minutes, right?
Okay.
And I think what I'm going to do is I wanted to do a quick fire at the end, but what I'm going to do is put some of these longer questions I had into the quickfire round.
Okay.
So it might be a bit of a struggle to get through
All
them
right, then
quickly.
let's see what we can do.
We'll see what we can do. Yes, okay, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to ask you these questions.
Let's go.
So you've won an award for recruitment and retention. What are you doing that's different to get you these awards?
That award specifically, or the awards that I've won?
Yes. Yeah.
That award specifically, that was for best for recruitment and retention at the Care Home Awards. And basically what I'm doing differently is what I've just described. So that is the trying to tailor the adverts and to find the niches in the local area and appealing to people. And that's what makes me different, I believe. And I've said, and kind of a good soundbite, I've said it a few times, social care doesn't have a recruitment and retention crisis. It's got an education crisis because people aren't being shown how to advertise properly. And to the point where a company that I know of that has a marketing department is sending out job adverts that have got massive typos in them, even things, and they're paying a lot of money for this marketing department or whatever. And you're looking at that and going, they can't even spell vacancies properly. So how can you, and if I'm a prospective applicant and I'm looking at a job advert that's written on a flyer, that's posted on a Facebook page that's got about 3 typos and several grammar mistakes, why on earth would I apply for that role?
Yeah.
And it's so that's what sets me apart, is that I make the effort. I make the effort. I look at the niches. I look at who I'm advertising to, and I reach out to them.
Okay. So you've also been recognised for promoting staff well-being. What's the 3 main things that you've done to achieve that?
Wow. Mental health support. Mental health problems are on the up. That's the society we live in today. Don't write people off because they've got mental health problems. I've worked with people who are neurodiverse. I've worked with people who've got an array of mental health problems, and it's important not to write them off because of that. Have a look at, talk to them, find out what support they need, and offer them that. And a lot of the time, you'll sit down with someone and go, "You've been diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. What does that look like? How can I help you?" And a lot of the time, they'll say, "There's nothing you can do." That's fine. Let's revisit that in a month's time, because maybe when they feel worse or better, they might know, and I can offer them that support. So that's one, would be talk to them. 2 would be invest time in them. So it's not just enough to have supervisions and just kind of say hello to them in passing. Actually check in on them. And I've just had this conversation with Julie Garrity, who would be a really good person for you to talk to, by the way. And she said one of the best managers she ever worked with. And it's very Alex Ferguson-esque, actually. If you've ever heard anyone who used to play for Manchester United talk about Sir Alex Ferguson, the best leader she ever worked with was someone who would, wherever they were, they could walk down a corridor in their workplace and go to somebody, "Oh, how's your mum? Oh, is your sister okay? She wasn't well the other day." And she would remember all these things that was going on in those people's lives. It's a skill, because I sure as hell haven't got to grips with that yet. I wish I had. It's something I'm working on. Invest time in them and actually make that effort. If they told you on Friday they're having a bad day, when you see them on Tuesday, to take them aside. "You okay?" It doesn't even have to be in the office, because the office could be a scary place. Take them out, go for a walk with them. Just take them outside somewhere quiet. "You okay? You weren't very good on Friday. Is there anything I can do?" And I guess
Oh, there's third. Sorry, I asked
yeah,
for
you
3.
said 3. The third would be, I did a coaching and mentorship qualification, so I'm a qualified coach, and that is mainly for career development and progression of people. As let's be fair, my career progression went from care assistant to nurse to deputy manager to registered manager of 2 homes, outstanding variety of awards. Not everyone's going to want to have that career progression, or some people might want to but don't know how to do it, or they want to do it but don't have the resources. And I wanted to be able to support people in that journey better. Because if you've ever read The Advice Trap by Michael Bungay Stanier, I think it is, really good book. There's 2 of them. He's got The Coaching Habit and The Advice Trap, which is basically, The Advice Trap's a great book where it looks at when you give people rock solid advice that is irrefutable, and they go, "Yes, you're right. Why the hell don't they do it?" And it looks at why they don't and what
Yes.
you can do about it. And that inspired me to go into coaching and to try and better support people.
Great. You're clearly really knowledgeable and well read, which so I think there's more conversations I want to have you about stuff, because a lot of the psychology and behavioral science stuff is really interesting to me. but we've only got 2 minutes left. So I'm going to fire through these last few and
Yeah.
we'll see what you think.
Okay.
What do you think? I've got to figure out how to make this a quick. Do you know what? Let's move on. Okay. What's the main difference between a good care home manager and a bad care home manager?
There's so many things. I think the main one is not having a vision of culture, not knowing what they want the team to do and how they want them to do it and to what standard, and generally poor communication, not communicating things to the team. And that would be vision, that might be problems they've got coming on, that might be things that are going wrong and things that are going right as well. During my interview process, one of the interview questions that I ask people is how do you like your manager to show that they appreciate the work that you do? And I thought that by asking this question, I was going to unlock the key to Pandora's box and I was going to get all this amazing advice from everybody. And they were going to say, oh, we want this and we want this and give us this. And everybody says, I just want to be thanked. I just want you to pull me aside and go, say thank you. And there's so many people that don't do that.
What is the biggest misconception about working in care?
That it's a broken system, poorly paid, low reward, and it's difficult. It's kind of all those things, but it's so, apart from the rewarding bit, it's so rewarding. It's such a rewarding sector to work in. And I've just done an interview today with somebody and I've asked for them to give me a specific positive moment from their time working in social care. And she said there is nothing like going into somebody's bedroom in the morning and having them look at you and realize who you are and smile and go, oh, it's you. It's you. I'm so glad you're on shift today. I'm so glad you're here. And that's priceless. You know, those sorts of things are priceless. And that is what social care is all about. And if they don't do it, you don't do it, I don't do it, who does it? Who looks after these people? Who provides that care that they need to a certain standard, the best standard ideally, but who does that?
That's really, really quite heartwarming. I'm going to do one more question. What is one thing in the care industry that needs to change now?
Education of the leaders. And by leader, I mean that could be a senior carer, a nurse, a team leader, a manager, an operations director, a provider. It could be anyone. There needs to be extra education around how to appropriately provide well-being for team members, how to do a lot of things that get taken for granted, and that includes recruitment and retention. And there needs to be a lot more focus on how to be better people generally, and how to lead by example.
Yeah.
Those are the sorts of things that don't get done. My current crusade, as it is supporting new managers and upcoming managers. And I see some things. I think Care UK looks great on LinkedIn, might not be so good generally, but they do like deputy managers and registered managers training courses. You want to be a deputy manager, this is a training course. You want to be a registered manager, this is a training course, to help prepare people. And I think that's great. In practice, it might not be a very good training course. I don't know because I only see it on LinkedIn. But I love that idea. I love the idea that, because I didn't have a clue. I got up and I winged it. And I'm the sort of person I want to be outstanding. I'm going to look at how to be outstanding. And a lot of people just go in and fly by the seat of their pants and just go day by day fighting fires. And they need to know it's more than that. And if you're not fighting fires and you do things right in the right way, this job it's not easy. It's never easy, but it's rewarding, and you can really enjoy the process. You can enjoy the benefits that come with it. And I'm at that stage where I'm at that stage where I just love everything about it.
Well, look, Ben, that was really insightful. I see why the podcast you did a couple of years ago needed to be 2 episodes, because there's 10 questions I have for all the information you give. But that was really great. Thank you very much for coming on. And yeah, let's keep in touch, because that was really insightful.
Thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. All the best.